Hello and welcome back to the third rail. Planning. It is probably one of the most enjoyable parts of building a layout, and it is made even more fun by a tool everyone should get, a track planning software package. Whatever the product, you can enjoy watching your ideas slowly morph into shape. They all work in a similar fashion. There is usually some form of drawing canvas on which track sections can be placed and moved around as needed in a more or less user-friendly fashion. Every software behaves a bit differently, so which to choose or use depends on an individual's pen threshold in this respect. Fortunately, it is easy to experiment. Some options are free, and commercial developers usually offer freely downloadable test versions. A key choice criteria is the availability of your track system, and there as well most packages offer hundreds of libraries. If you follow the channel, you'll be aware that my poison of choice is the Märklin M-track system, and luckily most track planning products support it. I chose to use Railmodeller Pro as it is the only native software package available for my operating system. It's Mac OS. I have used it for many years now, and it is easy to use and very intuitive. It is a commercial product that is actively maintained and regularly updated with new features and fixes. Over the years, I have learned to deal with a few quirks here and there, but one of them can be a real pain, and unfortunately, it has to do with the track library for Märklin M-track. The problem is the geometry of the 5207 double switch and 5215 crossing. As we will see in the video, this problem is not limited to Railmodeller Pro though, and applies to other track planning software packages too. So in this video, we are going to get a bit geekier than usual and have a look at the problem and at a few ways to work around it. First, let's have a look at the geometry so you have a bit of background if you are not familiar with the Märklin M-track system. The 5207 double switch and the later 5215 crossing have been developed to be used in combination with radius 2 turnouts. The 5207 and 5215 fit within the same space, have the same geometry, so I will use the word crossing to refer to them for the rest of the video. This will make the pronunciation easier. The radius 2 turnouts were sold under various references over the years. For example, 5202 L and R for left and right, or links und rechts, 5203, 5204, or the manual versions 5222, 5223. Their geometry is the same too. Their straight section has the standard straight length of 180 mm, and the curved section is a portion of the standard radius 2 curve for M-track, measuring 24 degrees 17 minutes. To be able to create parallel tracks, the track system offers a curved section, also measuring 24 degrees 17 minutes, under reference 5206. The parallel tracks resulting of the combination of a radius 2 turnout and this curve have a spacing of 77.4 mm, measured from the center of the track. 77.4 mm happens to also be the standard spacing between radius 2 and radius 1, so you'll find this figure everywhere on track plans based on the M-track system. Additionally, the turnout and curve geometry ensures that the ends of standard straight sections of track remain aligned in a parallel scenario, as you can see on this plan. The M-track system is called system for a reason, after all. Now, let's make this a bit more complex with a crossing. Both types need to fit in the same space as a standard straight section to preserve the vertical alignment achieved using radius 2 turnouts. So both straight sections of the crossing also have a length of 180 mm. We need to be able to align and join the diagonal part of the crossing with the curved section of R2 turnouts in the combination. At the same time, we need to maintain the standard 77.4 mm spacing between parallel track. This cannot be achieved with the 180 mm length used in the crossing. Märklin went for, dare I call it, an elegant compromise which made these crossings a bit more versatile. The crossing was designed so that its wider sides would match a radius 2 curvature. The resulting arc measures 23 degrees 16 minutes, just over 1 degree short of the required 24 degrees 17 minutes to match the turnout curve. To make up for the difference, a compensation bit was designed in the form of the 5208 compensation bit. It is for this reason that the 5207 and the 5215 crossings were sold bundled with a pair of 5208 sections. This works perfectly in real life. But whatever the track planning package, it looks like the implementation of the M-track library is incorrect as far as the geometry of the radius 2 crossings is concerned, and this is a source of issues. To make it simple, using these crossings as part of parallel track combinations, you immediately lose the critical 77.4 mm parallel spacing. Depending on the software package, you might not even notice it because the functionality to display unconnected joints might not be available or switched on, or software level tolerances hide the problem at first. This is not much of an issue, if at all, in a small oval scenario, but this might lead to alignment issues in larger or more complex layouts, often a distance away in another part of the plan, and it can take hours to trace the cause of such issues when they occur. Here are a few basic examples of the behavior using track planning software, starting with the product I use the most, which is Railmodeller Pro. On the left-hand side of the canvas, we have a combination of radius 2 turnout curve followed by a few straight sections. On the right-hand side, we have a similar combination, but I replaced the turnout with a 5207/5208 crossing combination. The parallel spacing achieved with the turnout combination is correct, so 77.4 mm. The spacing achieved with the crossing combination is 79 mm. So we have a 1.6 mm gap. Railmodeller is not alone in this respect, as mentioned earlier. Let's look at the same combinations in other packages. Here is SCARM, a very popular option. We'll use the same combinations. The turnout combination is correct. The crossing combination has a parallel spacing of 78.9 mm, so a 1.5 mm difference to what it should be. Now let's move to something else. Let's try Anyrail, which is also a popular option. The turnout combination is fine there too, and the crossing combination is also wrong. The parallel spacing is now 79.6 mm, so we have a 2.2 mm difference. Now let's try something open source. Here is xtrackcad. The product has two M-track libraries in the standard installation. So using the Märklin H0 M Gleis und Signale library, we are doing a bit better with a correct turnout combination and only a 0.45 mm difference in the parallelism of the crossing combination. With the other library, we have a 0.5 mm difference in the same area. I have used the measuring functions provided within each package to produce the values I've mentioned so far. So the most precise piece of software seems to be xtrackcad. Whatever the package, we have deviations, and the more parallel tracks are added, the larger the discrepancy will grow, and the stronger the likelihood of fit issues will be. I don't know if other track systems feature this type of combination, or if their libraries have different geometry-related quirks, but this might be a thing to check. But so far, it looks to me that M-track is a bit on its own here. This raises a question though. Why don't these issues happen in real life? Looking at this logically, computers are very accurate, so if the geometry of the M-track system was indeed wrong, I should be dealing with fit issues every time I lay a parallel track combination, and this is definitely not the case. Let's do a bit of maths to try and find out what is happening here. Full disclosure, I am not good at maths, so I might make a complete fool of myself here, but I will attempt to use my limited knowledge regardless, because I hate unsolved mysteries. Using the figures Märklin gives us, let's start by checking the basics and see if the different lengths add up. So we need to calculate the length of each curve. We'll start with the turnout curve. We know that radius 2 measures 437.4 millimeters, and we know the curve should measure 24 degrees 17 minutes, which equates to 24.28333 degrees in decimal. To calculate the arc length, we'll use the formula pi times r times the angle divided by 180. Let's plug in our figures. That's pi times 437.4 times 24.28333 divided by 180. And this gives us an arc length of 185.38 millimeters. Now let's do the same for the crossing curve. Radius 2 still measures 437.4 millimeters. The angle is now 23 degrees 16 minutes. That's 23.26667 degrees in decimal. Using the same formula for the arc length, we'll plug in our figures. It's pi times 437.4 times 23.26667 divided by 180. And this gives us an arc length of 177.61 millimeters. The crossing curve is indeed shorter than the turnout curve, which is how it should be. Now let's calculate the difference between the two to find out the length of the compensation bit that would be required. We'll do a little subtraction. Turnout curve length, that's 185.38, minus crossing curve length, that's 177.61. That gives us a difference of 7.77 millimeters. 7.77 millimeters should be the length of the compensation bit required with a crossing. But Märklin tells us that the 5208 compensation bit is 8 millimeters long. This, of course, doesn't add up. So let's check the real thing. Here is one here, and I'll use my cheapo measuring caliper to check its length. Aha! 7.7 millimeters. So Märklin simply rounded the figure up. So everything adds up using the information provided by Märklin and the correct measurement of the compensation bit. But could the rounding up of the 5208 measurement cause a large deviation? After all, the 5208 is a straight piece of track. Maybe this could cause a problem when added at the end of a curve. So let's compare the arc length and the chord length of the 1 degree 1 minute the 5208 is supposed to make up for. I used an online calculator here, so you can call me a cheat if you want, but the result is that the arc length is 7.76 millimeters and the chord length is 7.76 millimeters. I think it doesn't look like it should make much a difference, does it? So why does the software increase the parallel spacing by so much? A difference of 0.24 millimeters in the compensation bit cannot lead to an immediate 1.5 to 2.2 millimeter increase in the parallel spacing. Given everything else in the software lines up, the problem can only be the crossing. If we increase the angle of its curves, this immediately results in an increase of the parallel spacing. And this also means the curves are no longer radius 2. So, in my humble opinion, we have a few inaccuracies in the track libraries. First of all, the length of the 5208 is wrong everywhere, of course, and since it is the advertised figure in the Märklin catalogues and track plan books, it is a simple case of garbage in, garbage out. But this should not cause too much of a problem. The geometry of the crossing seems to be the problem in the packages we looked at earlier. SCARM, Railmodeller and Anyrail all used an angle wider than the 23 degrees 16 minutes required for the crossing. I think here again the descriptions used by Märklin in their catalogues or even the website can be a bit confusing. You would really have to look in the track plan books to get accurate measurements, and these might not have been available to the developers. So in my opinion, this should be an easy fix. So if any developers of the track planning packages mentioned here are watching, you might want to check my maths and the documentation, and assuming I am correct, maybe implement changes that would improve the accuracy and usability of the software. I am sure this would please at least a handful of people. But somehow, given the track system is no longer in production and that its users are slowly dying off one by one, I don't think anyone is going to fix this anytime soon. But you live and hope. This means finding a way to work around this little annoyance for now. And here is how I do this. First of all, I work with the lowest tolerances possible. This feature is useful when you want your plan to look nice, but the larger the tolerances are set, the higher the probability is that thing might not look as expected in real life. A poor fit can lead to derailment or frequent rubber tire loss or brakes on locomotives. I prefer to start with minimum tolerances and make the decision as to when and where to step away from the geometry a bit based on my experience with a given configuration in real life. The principle is simple. I start by laying items from which I know the geometry is correct in the software, and I insert the crossing and its makeup bits last. If any part of the crossing shows as unconnected, I simply disregard and consider it correct. When adding additional parallel tracks, I follow the same process. I start with the geometrically correct stuff, and I add the crossing and the 5208 makeup bits sections last. Again, I disregard the fact that the diagonal ends don't join with the rest. It doesn't look pretty, but this way I have ensured the 77.4 spacing is maintained and the geometry is correct, and as a result I am unlikely to experience fit issues elsewhere in the plan. It also makes sure that the inventory of required parts is accurate, which is one of the nice features most track planning software products offer. Now, if I ever need to use a crossing for another purpose than to create parallel tracks, I still have a geometry issue. To make sure the geometry remains correct, I start by replacing the crossing temporarily with a turnout. I lay a piece of track starting from its curved section, then flip the turnout and do the same on the other side if needed. I then take the turnout away and reinsert the crossing and its maker bits. I am now sure that anything attached to the now often newly laid track sections have the correct orientation. Not pretty again, but effective. This might all seem a bit convoluted and a lot of fuss for a few millimeters, but you'd be surprised at how quickly an accumulation of successive minor deviations can grow to a few centimeters. This in turn can cause a few headaches when trying to fill gaps, followed by the hassle of having to find track, just to find out when the time has finally come to start building that nothing fits as it should. Ask me how I know. Right, that's it for today. This was a long video about nothing but a few millimeters, but I hope some of you will have found it useful nevertheless. I know I would certainly have benefited from having the information when I first started using track planning software a few years back. If you have made it that far, thank you very much for watching. This is very much appreciated. So are all the subscriptions, likes and shares you have been kind enough to give me. I find them very rewarding and they are the best way to help the channel in reaching a wider audience. Many thanks again for whatever click you're going to do or have done, and bye for now.